Hey everyone, it's Cory McCarthy, and welcome to another weekly Q&A event. And I see there's already some questions that have popped in, but give it a couple seconds for the notification to go out and people to start coming into the Q&A session. So, just wanted to give that a second or two because sometimes these things don't kick off fast enough. People start. Oh, there we go. Shit, coming into the Q&A session. Okay. Okay, the viewers are starting to rock in now, so I'm gonna begin with the questions. So, first question: are there any books that you recommend for self-improvement? To be honest with you, I don't really read a lot of self-help books. I've had things recommended to me. I think the best, I wouldn't really call this self-help, but you could say it's self-help if you swing a particular way politically. There's a book by Vox Day called SJWs Always Lie. And if you've ever been in a situation where you've been under SJW attack or know people who have, this book gives a lot of pointers on how to basically fight them, essentially. Fight them correctly and keep your head, essentially. And it's a good book that I recommend to anybody who is more conservative, you know, right-wing leaning, even centrist. Anybody who doesn't subscribe to these absurd extreme social justice concepts and might find themselves under attack for something they say that was taken out of context or what have you. It's a really good book for that reason. It's just eye-opening. But other than that, I don't really read a lot of self-help books, I guess, besides fitness books. Yeah, anyway, you know, fitness and nutrition books, really. I've read a lot of those over time. But yeah, I don't really read a lot of other self-help books. When I do a lot of reading, it's a lot of times quick, like newspapers, news articles, magazines, online articles, technical manuals. I don't mean necessarily how to build something, but like, you know, technical manuals in the sense of like a science behind something, the science behind dreams. I have a book, a really good book on accounts of people who had sleep paralysis and the scary things they see and feel and encounter during sleep paralysis, which is really fucking freaky, actually. It's a subject that if you guys had never heard of sleep paralysis, it's something that horror films are made of. So it's definitely something you want to look into. And if you have experienced sleep paralysis, I'm sorry. I'm just sorry about that because it seems horrific. But anyway, let's move along. Hey man, I like the VMA so far. I'm glad you do. It's got everything that you would need to build muscle, you know, cut body fat, whatever. But it's all based on science. So far, I mean, I've never had anybody complain about the VMA, you know, not being helpful for them. So, but yeah. Anyway, let's move along. Thank you for that. That's Johnny Leather that wrote that. Daisy asks, is having a pet okay? I have 2 bunnies that are not in a cage and I keep them in my backyard, which is really big, and I take them to the park very often. My thoughts on pets are this. I wouldn't recommend going out unless there's circumstances. I don't agree with the idea of going out and purchasing a pet from a pet store or from a breeder. I don't agree with that. Because that's perpetuating that bad behavior, that exploitation of animals. Now, however, having a pet that you acquired by adoption or you've rescued in some sense, even if that is from a store. Like, for instance, let's say you go to a store, like I have done, and find a sick animal in there that's being neglected, being basically left to die in a small cage, like a bird or a lizard or whatever. I leave that up to your judgment. Now, I have done that before where I've gone to a store, I didn't even have I wasn't even going to buy an animal. I don't like to buy animals from stores, but I'll be there to get food, for instance, like for my birds, like bird seed or toys. And I'll see this, you know, and I can't just let that kind of thing slide. And as I mentioned in my recent video about Richard, I can't let that go. And the managers don't seem to give a shit. So yeah, I paid whatever it is for your average budgerigar and finch, I guess between 15 and 20 bucks in the US here, to acquire the ill bird. and a couple times, a few times actually, I've had to do this. One was actually a very rare albino bird that did not look like it was doing too well. It was an albino budgerigar, and I nursed it to health. But yeah, I mean, birds are so smart. They're very smart animals. Did you know the average African gray has the mental capacity of like a 10-year-old child? That's incredible. Anyway, I could not, I couldn't just let that kind of thing go. So in those situations, I think owning a pet is okay. In like a rescue or a save type situation, like a you know, you're taking on, you're adopting, or even a rescue you had to pay money because you had no other choice. I think that's okay. Anyway, this is like a real philosophical topic, I suppose, for a lot of, and it caused a lot of problems for a lot of vegans, because some vegans are very absolute and other vegans are more, you know, they go with the situations and the circumstances, and they understand there are situations and circumstances that need to be accounted for. And so you have two sides of the spectrum, and it can cause serious conflict. Anyway, let's move along. Have I ever heard of savate? Yes, I have heard of. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that properly. It's French. Savate or savate is a French kickboxing martial art. It's very old. It's like, I'd say 1800s, if I'm not mistaken. If I'm also not mistaken, they used open hand slapping instead of punching, because punching was considered ungentlemanly or unsportsmanlike. So they would use open hand slaps as their hand strikes. But otherwise, they had kicking. I guess they thought kicking wasn't ungentlemanly, but yeah, punching, apparently close fist punching was. So unless something about savate has changed, that is what I understand about it. Somebody asked me, anyway, somehow that question disappeared. Do I need to take deload weeks? I do take deload weeks when I feel like my CNS has been taxed, and I feel like my recovery is being hindered, and I feel as though like my strength is declining. Basically, I listen to my body, and if my body's telling me take a break, either I'll go lighter, I'll dial the frequency back a lot. So for instance, I might go from like doing everything twice or 3 times a week to doing everything just you know, once a week, except for maybe like some smaller body parts that I feel like I want to emphasize, like the arms or something. And I'll do that sometimes when I feel like I got to give my body a recharge, or if I really feel bad. Like and I don't let it get to this point, but if I let it get to the point where I'm feeling fucking awful, I will just take a week off the gym altogether and just chill. You know, I'll keep my diet on like a maintenance level, but I'll just chill. Do I think that Cedric McMillan deserved the victory at the Arnold Classic? Unfortunately, I have not. I've not physique in a long time. I haven't actually followed professional bodybuilding in, I'd say, probably a couple years, maybe more than that. I mean, I'm aware of who the Mr. Olympia is, but beyond just general awareness, I haven't actually followed the sport and the various contests. Last I saw Cedric was looking really good. He was keeping that classic look, that golden era look, that tapered waist, but full muscle bellies. He's a tall guy from what I can gather. So he's holding his muscles pretty well. Let me see here. Just to let you guys know, I do have Tara moderating right now. So, you know, there might be some things that are going to vanish, and I'm noticing some messages are vanishing. So anyway, is full body training days better than push-pull days? No, not necessarily. I mean, it depends on where you're at. I feel that full body is great for beginners because you're working on those big core compound lifts, squat, bench, deadlift, overhead press, bent over row, pull-ups, things like that. And you're getting strong at those. You're not really at a point yet where you need to worry too much about smaller individual exercises and tweaking so much, because you're not advanced at that point yet where you really have to worry about that sort of focus. But that's where full body is really great. It's for beginners who are trying to build that foundation, in my opinion, and with ample frequency to do so, when your body's going to be the most responsive. As you become more advanced, intermediate and advanced lifters, I say that frequency is still important, and this has been shown in research, but moving to more of a push-pull or an upper-lower type style is better, in my opinion, because it allows you to give greater volume per session to particular muscle groups. So instead of like just doing bent over rows and deadlifts for your back, maybe some pull-ups or something like that, you can also throw in a variety of, like, you know, dumbbell rows. You can get some, like, you know, hyperextensions, things like that. You can really add more volume to your individual days because you have more room to play with. If you were to do that kind of volume in a full body routine, you would be in the gym for like 2 or 3 hours, maybe longer, in a given session. So it's just not feasible. What is my opinion on Islam? I have to say this. I agree with Richard's video. I agree with Richard's video. I'm sure that's why you guys are asking. I do agree with Richard's video. I think that Islam is an incompatible belief system for Western values. And what we're noticing right now in Europe especially, and the thing is, Pew Research, for anyone, Richard actually cited Pew Research that shows that an inordinate amount, a large, scary amount of Muslims, something like 70 to 80% of Muslims, are pushing for Sharia law. Okay, and that's not compatible with, I mean, especially for anybody who might have, it's so funny because you got these W's that are like, that fight for women's rights, that fight for trans rights, that fight for gay rights, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And yet Sharia opposes all of that. And yet at the same time, these same people are like, refugees welcome. And they're bringing these refugees from these hostile parts of the world that have these hostile beliefs to that are in opposition to our own cultural values in the West here. And you can see the effects of it happening in Europe right now. You can see the effects of it mostly happening there because of the larger majority of influx they've had in Europe than what we've had here in the United States. You know, which is why we need to be vetting in the United States. We need to be careful of our borders. We need to have secure borders. But anyway, you know, I do agree with Richard on the topic. And Europe is paying a pretty nasty price for it right now, and it seems to only be getting worse. Anyway, yeah, that's my thoughts on that. And then there's the whole halal slaughter thing, but I can also say the same thing about any kind of slaughter. You know, even be it the way we do it with like darts to the head, you know, like the bolt gun, or you know, be it kosher methods. It's all nasty. It's all unnecessary. Any cheap and effective herbs? Cissus quadrangularis, not too expensive, really good for your joints, really good for soft and hard tissue. I use it all the time. Like, I keep it as a maintenance sort of thing. It's really good for recovering from, like, if you feel clicks and pops, if you have an injury of some kind, of a fighting injury, maybe you've sprained something. It's even been used to heal faster from surgery when you've broken significant bones. There's actually research to show that as well. Cory, I usually don't drink, but last night a friend offered me a cup of red wine, and it didn't really affect. But you said it blunts protein synthesis up to 2 to 3 hours. Yes, alcohol. Now, depending the amount that it blunts, the percentage that blunts is dependent on how much you consume, but any amount is not preferable. Can blunt protein synthesis. It can raise cortisol. It can therefore lower testosterone and raise estrogen in the body. And those are some of the negative effects associated with alcohol. There is a new study that has recently been released, or recently been, I became aware of it more recently, that shows that there are a few forms of cancer associated with alcohol consumption as well. I might or may not do a video on that. I have not decided yet. Given my stance on things like drugs and alcohol and promiscuity and things like that. I do tend to do videos about these sorts of topics because, you know, the negatives outweigh any of the positives, and people are overindulging in these things and hurting themselves. And the way I look at it is you should be educated on these subjects if you're going to do something. And then if you do something and you have the you have the negative effects of what, because of what you've done, you experience the negative effects from it, the repercussions, then you have yourself to blame, really. But because you went into it educated. That's the way I look at it. Wow, there's a lot of messages of energy. Richard asks, what do I think of eating meat you have raised yourself? I still look at it as eating meat as, or any kind of animals you raise yourself, be it for eggs or dairy or what have you. People are like, what about backyard hens in your own backyard? As still as a form of animal exploitation. These animals did not give the consent. They are sentient beings. This has been proven by science, observably proven by science. Even fish, there are thousands of studies on this, and I've mentioned this in previous videos. I've actually shown the review of said studies, I guess you said the meta-analysis of these studies, thousands of said studies on this. And these while these animals can't give consent the way we do, I'm sure no sentient creature who values life and they fight, they scream, they don't want to die, is going to give consent to be slaughtered for your sustenance. You know, that's just how that is, or for your clothing or what have you. And the thing is, there's alternatives to it. There are alternatives. There are viable alternatives to these animal products that make it so that you don't need to. You don't need to. So it's exploitation really without a purpose. Now, I'm not to say that there aren't real extreme survival scenarios where you have to kill to eat. I'm not going to say that doesn't happen. I mean, there are situations where people have had to kill their fellow man to eat. Like the Andes crash, I believe in 1979, or was it 72? I can't remember. One of those. There was a plane crash in the Andes, and they resorted to cannibalism because they were stuck up on the mountainside. You know, but outside of these rare, extreme circumstances, there's, at least here in the West, where we don't live in an extreme environment, we have alternatives that are completely viable. Do I think vegan gains is in danger now? Okay, this is. I mean, it's possible. It's possible for a couple of things. One, if I'm not mistaken, I think that Canada is trying to pass a law right now where you can't speak out against Islam, which is basically one step towards Sharia. It's ridiculous. But yes, in Europe, for instance. Now, again, this is Europe. There have been people. Like the Charlie Hebdo situation, people who have been killed or been assaulted for something they have said about Islam. I mean, look at a guy like Paul Joseph Watson, for instance. He's constantly doing videos on Islam, and he's getting death threats all the time by message, all the time. Like, you know, people saying like how, essentially, and I'm paraphrasing here, how dare you speak ill about Islam? You know, I'm going to come cut your fucking head off. Seriously. So I do think that that Richard could be in some degree of danger, even from his own government, you know? Anyway, do I play video games? I don't really have a lot of time for video games. When I have had time in the past, I have. I love the Mortal Kombat games. I love the Elder Scrolls games. And I can tell you, when that new Elder Scrolls comes out, probably another couple of years or so, I'm going to be all over that. I'm going to have to like watch it too, because I will get absorbed in that game world and won't want to leave. And hours pass like minutes. It's an incredible series if you never played it, because of how expansive and kind of choose your own adventure-ish it is. And it's beautiful to look at too. And I've been playing those games since '96. I remember back in '96 when Daggerfall came out. It was a fucking incredible game. Now, looking back on it, the graphics are horrible, but at the time they seemed so good. But then again, you know, for the time, it's all relative. But yeah, other than that, I don't really play a lot of video games. I don't really have time for a lot of video games. I don't even have time for movies a lot, and I do like to watch, you know, some films every now and then. And I haven't even a lot of time for that. So there's actually a number of films I still want to watch, you know, especially in the horror and sci-fi genres. Are you concerned about the increase of cancer from your increased IGF levels from soy consumption? Not really, no. The way I look at this is, and this is something I've explained in previous videos, the way to really cause a serious problem, from what I understand, and this is looking at the research, you have to significantly increase IGF-1, and then you have to sustain that increase. Look at it sort of like, well, you get steroid-like effects from doing squats. You won't, obviously, because if you would, you'd have people walking around looking like Mr. Olympia just from squatting as a natural. But you won't. You won't. And why is that? It's because the increase may be relatively significant in testosterone, IGF, and GH. And keep in mind, lifting weights also raises IGF-1, and lifting weights fights cancer. But the increase is also transient. In other words, it goes up, but then within 2 hours' time, it begins to go back down to the baseline. So you're not going to experience a significant and sharp enough and sustained enough increase to put you at any risk from what I can see. And on top of that, and well, this is unless you're slamming soy every 30 minutes in large quantities to keep those IGF levels peaked. That might cause you problems, but that's not reasonable to be doing that. I don't even eat that much soy at a day's time, and I use it as a primary protein source. So I'm not really overly concerned about it because the increase is transient. It returns to baseline, you know, within, you know, anywhere between an hour to 2 hours time. And it's the same thing that I wouldn't be worried about cancer because of the IGF-1 increases, the significant increases from weightlifting, you know. And I'm not going to worry about the negative effects of growth hormone because of weightlifting, or, you know, I'm not going to think I'm getting steroid-like results from doing squats. So look at it that way. And even still, furthermore, keep in mind, a lot of soy studies are done on mice. The results aren't entirely conclusive for humans. In fact, it's the Cancer Society of America has commented that all of the negative effects, for instance, on breast cancer from soy, have been found in animal, like rodent studies, not in the human studies. So again, this comes back to that while an animal study may present results that you might want to take into consideration or could be interesting to look into with humans, and again, this is an ethics aside from testing on animals, but the existing studies that are out of my control that are there, they're different in results oftentimes from what humans will get. And you'll see this with herbs as well. Like, I think Tribulus terrestris raises testosterone like pigs and dogs or something, but Tribulus terrestris actually doesn't do shit for human beings. So keep that in mind. What exercises do I do for my back? My favorite ones are deadlifts, pull-ups, not pull-downs, but pull-ups. Rows, I do a prone style row where you set a bench at an incline angle and you lay forward against the incline bench. So you're facing the incline bench, but your head, obviously, you don't want to put your face on that nasty bench. But your head's kind of coming up, the chin's kind of coming up over the bench. So you lay against the bench and you do dumbbell rows like that. That keeps you, that prone angle against the bench keeps you from cheating. And so it makes the move more strict. And also I feel my lats and my middle back really fire hard on that movement. It's a really tight squeeze at the top. It's even better than bent over barbell rows, in my opinion, from what I felt. And EMG data supports the same conclusion. So I'll do that. I do pendlay rows. Let's see, I do back extensions. Really a whole number of things, but those are, and I do dumbbell bent over rows as well, just where I'm just kind of leaned over and doing them, but I like to do those with underhand grip. Those are really some of the examples of the back exercises that I do most often. Chin-ups as well, but I mostly focus on my biceps with those. Am I married? Not yet. Daisy's asking that question. Strike 4 says, can you recommend anything to help with aid digestion, help with bloating, or the feeling of having a full stomach? Well, are you cooking your food enough? Are you cooking it properly? Is it beans? I mean, I need to know more here. I mean, are you eating a whole hell? Are you sucking it down? Where you're getting a lot of air in as well? There could be a number of reasons that cause that. I would say chew carefully, eat slowly, cook your food. If it's beans, get all the bubbles out. You know, cook them thoroughly. That can really help. And worst case scenario, use a digestive enzyme. If you're eating big meals because you're like trying to put on muscle, use a digestive enzyme. That might help you as well. It can help you break down the food and utilize it a little better. But yeah, and also, I mean, do you have any history of digestive problems? That can be something as well to consider. Can I compensate for the lack of nutrition and their side effects of not being able to eat vegetables currently with other types of foods? And there's not being able to eat vegetables currently. I'm not sure I understand you can't eat vegetables with your other foods. I don't understand what you mean by that. Like, you can't have vegetables and tofu or vegetables and beans. I've never heard of that. If you're talking about you know, nutrient pairing here, where people are like, you know, oh, never eat fruit with this, or never eat high fat with a fattening food like an oil or an avocado with this. That is bullshit. It's bullshit. It's been proven wrong in research. You know, but if you have a digestive problem, that's a different story. I'm not a doctor. Keep this in mind as well. What's the cheapest and most effective supplement next to creatine? Oh my God, there's a lot of supplements are so conditional. I would say if you're going to take creatine, well, first of all, counting protein powders aside, assuming you need them for your macros, and perhaps keeping aside of any amino acids, even like branched chain amino acids or anything that you might be using as a way to supplement your diet. Let's say that you're training fasted. If you train fasted, you should take BCAAs pre-workout. This has been shown in research to help you negate the negative, you know, hold at bay the negative effects of the muscle damage effects from training fasted. Or if you're like really deep dieting, BCAAs have been shown also to help you keep your muscle mass intact. But aside from those staples, and now obviously aside from creatine, since you're mentioning creatine, I would say maybe next up beta-alanine, beetroot powder. Beetroot you can buy, you know, in massive bulk, like $25 for a fucking kilo of powder. That kilo will last you a long time if you're only doing about a tablespoon per training session. And I mean, it tastes like crap, but the effects on endurance, the effects on strength, on oxygen consumption, on the pump, because the nitrates are profound. They even refer to beetroot powder as the use of it as beet doping when it comes to cyclists. They're actually calling it beet doping. Now, that's not to say that it has a drug-like effect, but it's a pretty pronounced effect for a natural product. But aside from that, maybe beta-alanine. Beta-alanine works synergistically with creatine. Yeah, those are some examples, and they're not all that expensive. Beta-alanine's a little more expensive than beetroot powder, though. A little more expensive for the amount that you get for the price. You're going to probably get significantly less beta-alanine. It's also significantly more expensive than creatine. It's freaking cheap. Anyway, isn't Christianity just the same cancer like Islam, though? Thanks to the Enlightenment and secularism, we don't see the horrible side of this religion. Keep in mind, Christianity was at one time pretty fucking brutal, but Christianity went through a reformation that Islam has not gone through. And it's that reformation. Now, this is where things get absurd, and one of the reasons why I can't really become a Christian. I think that a lot of Christian values are acceptable, being promoting strong families, promoting, you know, denouncing promiscuity, denouncing, you know, a lot of times, I guess, like a lot of Christians are against drug use as well. There are a lot of things that I find that are conservative factors in Christianity that I think are fine. But those are things you can have without being a Christian. You can follow these as well. But yeah, Christianity at one time was pretty brutal. Then it went through a reformation. And this is where I have an issue with I can't bring myself to believe in Christianity because I find that absurd. First of all, I'm agnostic. I'm not an atheist. Everyone keeps asking, am I agnostic? I mean, am I atheist or do I believe? I'm agnostic. don't have evidence to support whether God exists. I don't have evidence to support whether God doesn't exist. I'm in the middle waiting for evidence before I make a decision on something and, you know, swing one way or the other. That may never happen in my lifetime. But that being said, when it comes to another factor is the fact that they went through a Reformation, the fact that they created a New Testament and they basically edited the Word of God. I was under the impression, you know, again, going by what Christians believe, if it's the Word of God, wasn't it final the first time? Why are you editing it? Why are you creating a new version of it? I mean, this is not, I'm not trying to be offensive to Christians that are watching this or anything like that. You can believe what you want to believe, but that to me is a little bit questionable. You know, that you didn't like how something was written the first time, or the things that something professed the first time. So you decided, I'm not going to follow these aspects. I'm going to follow these aspects, and we're going to change these aspects. That just seems a little bit like cheating to me. But whatever. Anyway, moving along. Is there any truth to the belief that fruit groups should not be mixed, like acid from fruits? I actually already kind of talked about this. Peace Love's asking the question. Just a moment ago, I talked about this, that there's no science to, you know, whether you should or shouldn't mix, you know, particular food groups together. Like, and I've heard before things like you shouldn't eat carb-rich food with oil or an avocado. Like you shouldn't have avocados and rice, I guess, to give you an example of one of the absurdities I've heard. But there is no sound science to show that that is the case. I mean, there's none to be seen. It's the same thing with raw dieting. So I think that's a lot of that pseudoscience. It's like wives' tales that have been spun and into being believed as fact. So yeah. Daisy asked if I'm an atheist. I just said I was an agnostic. Should we alternate a push-pull workout with a upper-lower workout? If so, weekly, monthly, or yearly? You don't need to alternate. I mean, if you get bored, if you have workout ADHD and you want to change things up, that's fine. But you don't need to do that necessarily. And you can work your push-pull where it's not a push-pull legs, for instance. You can do it where it's like on your push day, you'll do quadriceps work and glute work and calf work, and on your pull day you'll do hamstring work, and basically I think because, you know, deadlifts and leg curls are pulling movements essentially, just like squats and calf raises are essentially pushing movements. So you can break it up, and you put your leg work in your push and pull days and be in the gym 4 days a week. In fact, in the Vegan Muscle Academy, I've promoted programs like that. And furthermore, in my book that'll be coming out soon, hopefully, I think I'm going the way of an ebook here, but soon will be coming out. I'm just tying everything together now, and I want to get it edited and cleaned up and look nice and put some photographs in. But that's also going to present a push-pull split where legs, it's a 4-day split. There's a 5th optional day, but you'll see that in the book if you guys get the book. But it's the core program is a 4-day push-pull split. You know, and the leg work is incorporated into the push or the pull days, you know, accordingly. Is having a melatonin deficiency in your body possible? I mean, not from light and bad sleep schedule, maybe because your body is fucking up. If so, would daily melatonin supplementation be necessary? If you are truly depleted, if you truly have some kind of deficiency in melatonin, and I'm sure it exists, I'm not a doctor, but I'm sure it might exist, because there are wild deficiencies of all sorts out there, to be honest with you. But if you do have a deficiency in melatonin, then yeah, supplementing an exogenous form of melatonin might be helpful for you. But I would certainly ask you to see your doctor first. I'm not a doctor. Don't use my advice as a medical. I would feel awful if I advised you something and you took my advice as medical gold practice and got hurt somehow. That I would feel terrible if somebody took my advice as replacement for seeking medical help. If you are sick, if something is wrong with your body, get to a doctor. I have lost people in my life because they ignored symptoms. I've known of people who have lost people because they've ignored symptoms, sometimes out of their own beliefs, like maybe they thought God was going to heal them, for instance. And these people have suffered because of this. and sometimes very painful deaths. And I would hate to see somebody, if you're sick, embrace modern technology and modern medicine and go see a doctor. And then, of course, you know, if you're into more natural treatments, see what the doctor, meet the doctor halfway. I don't mean go to a naturopath. I mean, go to a doctor, and maybe if they're like, take some Advil for a pain, instead maybe you'll take white willow bark or something, which has got, it's not as effective, but it does have pain-reducing properties. You'll still have to deal with some of the obviously of a headache or joint or whatever's injured if it's hurting. But talk with your doctor and show them your concern. Show them some research. Talk about your concerns, but never, ever, ever replace medical treatment. My advice for medical treatment from a professional. What are the best fruits per dollar? Protein, DOM reducing, vitamins, etc. In my opinion, the best fruits are apples are fucking cheap. Cheap, and they're filling. The amount of the calories aren't so high for the amount of weight that they are, like how much they sit in your stomach. Plums are the same way. Oranges can be kind of like that. They're just not as high in fiber as apples and plums from what I understand. Cantaloupe is great. Watermelon is a little less so great than cantaloupe. Honeydew melon. All of these are really great fruits. I love berries, but berries, I mean, I can pile those in because they're just not as fibrous as, say, an apple. Did you know that a large banana, the calories in a large banana, you could get away with eating 4 small plums for the calories that are in one large banana. And the plums will weigh more, and it'll make you feel more satiated. So keep some of those kind of things in mind too. Like, for instance, if you're dieting down and you have a limited amount of calories to play with, how do you want to allocate those calories in such a way that you won't feel really hungry? That's a trick that you can use too. And that's what I love about vegan dieting, because when you're dieting down in a vegan diet, there's so much fiber, you know, in the salads, of the broccoli, the kale, the spinach, you know, and the fruit, that it makes it so easy to feel full. Beans are high in fiber as well. So those are my advice. So those are some great fruits. Bananas are cheap, I guess, depending on where you live in the world. But here in America, bananas are cheap, even here in the winter. Apples, oranges, berries are pretty expensive, I guess, relatively. But those are something to consider. You can get a cantaloupe for a relatively decent price. Peaches are pretty good too. Plums. These are all things you can consider. Rock fruits are just really good for how satiating they are, and for their cost as well. And they're all rich in nutrients, like vitamins and minerals. Keep that in mind. Cory, do you have any recommendations on vegan cookbooks or resources for vegan cooking? Actually, I'm glad you asked this question. There are 2 really good books that I recommend. Now, I'm not going to say they're ultra healthy, but you can get some great food ideas out of them. Thug Kitchen is one of them, and another one is called Street Vegan. And both are available on Amazon, but both of them are kind of like gourmet vegan cooking. Street Vegan is based on the recipes of the chef who runs or owns or founded Cinnamon Snail here in New York, which is infamous for its donuts, by the way, and it's like and its brownies and things like that. And Thug Kitchen, they might have a restaurant somewhere for all I know, but it's really gourmet vegan restaurant type food. Has Marcus gone vegan yet? For anyone who doesn't know, Marcus is the golden one. No, Marcus has not gone vegan. This is why Vegan Cheetah's a moron for calling him a vegan. Vegan Cheetah doesn't know what the fuck he's talking about. Vegan Cheetah likes to call a lot of people a lot of things, included, without really knowing the definition behind these things or having all the information. Yeah, Marcus is not vegan. Marcus did a 30-day vegan challenge, but he's not fully vegan yet. I've given him all the information. He has commented before that he thinks that vegans have a good argument. There's just that cognitive dissonance there, I believe. But Marcus is, I hate to use this term, but he's like, I'd say 98% vegetarian. What I mean by that is he still has dairy. He still eats eggs now and then. He doesn't eat a whole lot of meat by his own admission. And the only times he does eat meat, apparently, is when someone has offered him something. That's what I gather. And if you look at my channel, there's actually an interview with Marcus on this channel. You can watch that interview. And we go into detail about this whole thing because we did the interview after his vegan challenge. So yeah, moving along. Cory, skinny but putting on mass in the past months. Should you do free weights as a beginner? Oh yeah, oh yeah. A trainer told me not to something e-day, I don't know what that means, and stick to machines. But I've been making such good progress in the past month. You should be doing free weights. Whatever trainer told you this is an idiot. What they might be trying to tell you is that learn, you know, get a sense of how to lift first, I suppose. But you can do that with fucking free weights with a good spotter and a good trainer. Free weights are going to engage more dumbbells or barbells, dumbbells to some degree more so, more stabilizer muscles than machines will. Machines also put you into a fixed range of motion, a fixed plane of motion, rather. Sometimes a fixed range of motion if you're not the right height or shape for the machine. But a fixed plane of motion, which is not always natural, and it differs, and it can even differ for each person's anatomy to some degree. Free weights are the best, and they've done research, for instance, EMG research, where they've looked at dumbbell bench press, barbell bench press, and machine bench press. And what they found was the free weight work created significantly more activation in the chest. Now, if I'm not mistaken, the triceps worked a little harder on the machine for some reason, but the chest worked less. But the way I look at it is if you are trying to work your chest, you want your chest to get the most activation. So you can do triceps work on your arm, on an arm segment. Like if you're doing on a day where you have arms involved, like on a pull day, on a push or pull day, triceps would be on a push day. You can do some push downs, some dips, some extensions for triceps. But when you're working on your chest, while your triceps are going to get some involvement, you really should be focusing on the chest. So whatever trainer told you this is full of shit, don't fear the free weights. Learn good. My beginners that use my Vegan Muscle Academy, for instance, start with weights. Like I have them doing weights. I have them doing squats, deadlifts, bench press, that sort of thing. Getting good on the movements, picking up good habits, good form, getting strong, building a strong foundation, and then taking it from there. Do you think you can develop diabetes from eating too much fruit? No, I don't think so. Keep in mind with fruit, unlike with candy, for instance, fruit, you are getting a lot of peripheral nutrients. You're getting fiber. You're getting various vitamins and minerals. And all of these things will affect the digestion. The fruit, the sugar that's in fruit is going to absorb so much slower than, it's not going to cause the insulin spike that candy, for instance, processed sugar will. So I have never read of a case outside of where they isolated the fructose from fruit and gave it to rats, for instance, to induce diabetes. I have never heard of a situation where somebody got diabetes from eating too much fruit. I do know of situations where people get fat from eating too much fruit. I have stalled on my diet before from eating too much fruit. So that's because I went over calorically. Fruit calories still count. And on that note, guys, I'm going to be doing a video soon taking down some fruitarian shit. I saw the most absurd thing on Facebook about a day ago. It was so absurd. It wasn't just absurd scientifically, but it perpetuated a mental disorder. And it has to be called out because people like that are going to give veganism a bad name. And they're going to make us look bad. And you know, these nutty people, but there's more on that to come. As you guys know, I don't agree with fruitarianism. I don't agree with raw dieting. And it's not just my opinion. I base it all on science. And I'll be covering this topic possibly next week. We'll see. Okay, let's see here. Would you say pro-life? read about flexibility prolonging life, but then again, I have seen some of the coolest shit recently. Again, I got more videos coming out about this too, because life extension and anti-aging I'm a big fan of this shit. And I want to share this with you guys so you all can benefit from it as well. But I've never seen anything about flexibility extending life, but I wouldn't be surprised if we get a study at some point that shows a correlation between flexibility and or greater flexibility and greater lifespan. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised, especially with some of the things I've recently found out that cause an extension in life that I have. And even the scientists are like, how the hell? I mean, we know that when we account for, you know, social factors, education factors, I don't want to give it away because it'll be coming soon. Other factors like bad dietary lifestyles, etc., that this still rings true. But, and it's really weird, but I'll be getting to this soon. I know I'm going to keep you guys hanging here, but it's fun when you can learn these things in the way that I did when I found the studies. But so I wouldn't be surprised if we find that flexibility actually is it's going to have some benefit too. Really, anything I think that can be beneficial to your body in some capacity is going to have some positive effect on your lifespan in some way, even if it just makes you more jovial as a person, and therefore your life is increased because you are under less stress and you're happier. We'll see. Anyway, let's see here. Somebody asked if I'm a Bosmer in the Elder Scrolls, an obligate carnivore in order to live in Valenwood, would I be should I be a vegan and risk breaking the Green Pact to thus be expelled from my home country and peers? I did not know the Bosmers, which are elves, by the way, in the Elder Scrolls, were obligate carnivores. Are they biologically obligate carnivores, or are they just because of the extreme environment they live in obligate carnivores, is the question. I didn't know that. If you are a biologically obligate carnivore, which human beings are not, then yeah, you can't be vegan, maybe without some kind of extreme medical intervention, like some kind of special supplement or something. I believe that cats need to get some kind of like a special taurine supplement to be able to be vegan, because taurine is an essential amino acid for cats, for felines, and they have, and it's, you know, you can get it, you can make it synthetically, and it's found in small amounts in plants, but it's not something that is readily found in the way that cats need it per day, which is what makes cats an obligate carnivore. So yeah, I mean, if you're a biologically obligate carnivore, you kind of gotta eat meat, I guess. You know, I mean, that's what you were designed to do from a biological standpoint. Unless you can isolate the what makes it that you need meat, isolate that, and then synthetically acquire it. And this would be kind of like another theoretical question. If vampires, if there were such thing as vampires, and you know vampires require blood, drink blood for sustenance, what if a vampire developed a blood alternative? I think there's a movie about this too called Daybreakers. But what if vampires invented a blood alternative? Would they then need to hunt humans? It's that same kind of question, you know, a synthetic alternative. And as we become more advanced in Western Civ here, we may find more and more alternatives to things that give people chances they never had before, and make old ways, you know, become bygone, basically. Are you aware? Am I aware of any studies outlining nutritional interventions that can prevent hair loss? If I'm not mistaken, hair loss comes from one of the, well, it's genetic for one, but if you're prone to it, an increase in DHT levels, which is a form of testosterone, can lead to male pattern. It can facilitate male pattern baldness. My advice would be is to keep your DHT levels low. There's supplements you can take that can help reduce DHT. I believe, oh God, what is that one? Fuck, off the top of my head, I can't think of it right now. Shit. Yeah, I can't think of it right now. There's one supplement that definitely reduces DHT. Yeah, I can't think of it right now. I'll have to ponder that. But yeah, I mean, like, eating meat won't do you any favors, because that can raise DHT due to the incredibly high creatine content in meat, which can raise DHT. And also, if your body just naturally turns over testosterone to DHT, you convert a lot to DHT, you can have a problem too with male pattern baldness. So I would say definitely don't eat meat. I would advise you maybe limit your creatine consumption if you're sensitive to that sort of thing. 5 grams a day. I mean, that's probably still less than you get from eating meat anyway. 2.5 to 5 grams a day. And look into supplements that might help you lower DHT. There are blockers for that sort of thing that won't allow that you won't ruin your hair follicles. To be honest, it's not something I've really looked a lot into, to be honest with you, because I've never had a problem with hair loss, but it's something that I might certainly give some consideration if it's something that you all would want to see. Have I done yoga before? Yes, I have. I did yoga in college. It was I had a half a credit floating around, and I was like, I need to fill this last half credit. What the fuck? It is like no half credit classes. I didn't want to bog my workload down with yet another full credit or 2 credit class that's like hefty. So yoga was being offered. It's a half a credit, so I was like, I'll take yoga. But yeah, I just did it in college. That was it, one time. Somebody asked, am I going to do a collab with Jason Blaha? Probably never. Oh, wow. I have a lot of disagreements with Jason Blaha. However, there will be a collab coming up with Ask Yourself, Isaac Brown, of Ask Yourself. We are going to be discussing intersectionalism and SJWs. And, maybe more if you guys want to see more between Isaac and myself. I'm sure he'd love to do that. Anyway, my thoughts on MCT oil. There are some studies that show benefits to coconut, which contains MCT. And then there's other studies that show that there's not really, that it's kind of overblown. One of the studies I found interesting was on humans. They would have people consume an MCT oil at a mill, or a coconut oil even, with a capsaicin supplement or something containing capsaicin, like a pepper containing capsaicin. And they noticed that there was a modest increase in the metabolic rate, like the person got a boost in their metabolism from this, which might have a modest increase in fat burning if you're in the right caloric state and you're training and everything. But don't expect miracles from it. It's being touted as like this big fitness superfood, but don't expect miracles from it. In other words, don't expect that eating more and more and more MCT oil is going to help you burn more and more and more fat. It doesn't really work that way. It still contains calories, so you're eventually going to hit a surplus on MCT oil. To prevent chick grinding, something called sexus is invented, where eggs that contain a rooster won't get hatched. Is this real, and does this make the eggs vegan? Cholesterol not taken? No, any animal product is still not vegan, because you're still exploiting an animal. You're still going to be exploiting a living, sentient, conscious being that wants to live and doesn't want to be exploited, just like as you or I wouldn't want to be exploited, yeah, so that's my thoughts on that. That no, any animal product is not going to be vegan. With the sole exception, and people are going to laugh about this because it is a joke that goes around, but yeah, I mean, like, people are like, well, what if I drink my wife's breast milk or something? It's like, is that vegan? Well, it's technically an animal product, but because it's coming from a willing participant who's willingly providing it to you, if you got that sort of hankering for some reason, and there are some weird bodybuilders who think that drinking breast milk is going to help them grow or something. I've heard of this before. There's probably some fetishists too. I guess that would be vegan because it's given willingly. Breast milk would be given willingly. And it's human milk for human beings, really. Are there any advantages or disadvantages of working out in cold or hot conditions? I personally find it disadvantageous to work out in the cold. I can't breathe as well. I can't breathe as deeply. I feel like I'm setting myself to get sick. I prefer to work in temperate or warmer environments. And you won't find me jogging, for instance, in the cold, to give you an example. So yeah, I mean, but as for research, I have to look into that more. And benefits incorporating incline bench press, benching, and work in your working routine. Yeah, of course. Incline benching does significantly improve the activation of your clavicular pectoral muscles, upper pecs. Is transdermal magnesium a scam? Can it even pass the skin? I don't know if it can pass the skin. There are some transdermal products that appear to work because of their method of delivery. I think there's some B12 products that do that, but I just when it comes to B12, for instance, I just go sublingual and let that shit absorb right into the membranes of my mouth. But as for the absorbing the skin with magnesium, I don't know. I really don't know. I mean, you can absorb particular toxins through your skin. I mean, it is a porous, but it all depends on the process by which it's going to absorb into your body and get how it's going to get into your bloodstream, the mechanism by which. That's so. I mean, I don't see why you couldn't just take it orally or get it from your diet. Do I have a PlayStation 4? No, I don't. The last PlayStation I had, I still have it. It's boxed up somewhere. Is a PlayStation 2. Do I stretch before and after my workout? I will warm up before my workout, so I'll walk to my gym because I'm in New York, so it's easy to do that. I'll walk to my gym from the subway, or if it's a close by location, I'll just walk directly to it. And I'll lift through the movement, for instance, at a light weight, like 50% of my working weight for the first set or two of a big compound movement, just to get the muscle, feel the muscle working, get the joints warmed up a bit and lubricated, and get the blood into the muscle a bit. I won't go to failure on those. And then after I'm done lifting, I will do static stretches. Will my book be available in paper form too? I still like paper. It's renewable resource and very recyclable. Sure. If you guys want to see it in paper, I can look into getting it done through Amazon Publishing or some other source. I was just thinking it might be faster to get it out on PDF, but I could do both, I suppose, too. It's gonna. I'm so proud of this book. It's gonna be so. In my opinion, it will be the best training manual that exists. And I know it's a big fucking boast, but there's so many bro sciencey fucking programs out there and books and whatnot that, you know, this one is 99% based on the research, not on anecdote. The only things that aren't based on the research entirely would be like certain exercise tweaks that I think are a little more, that I personally think are a little more powerful. Like, for instance, you guys remember that I did a video about a few weeks back, a month back, or whatever it was, where I talked about the best biceps exercise you are not doing. And I showed a variation of the hammer curl that is actually really, really good. EMG supports it doing it one arm, but I showed a variation of that, which I find is even more powerful than the one arm version. But little things like that I might throw in there where I take an exercise that is very activating as it is, and then I sort of find a way to tweak it to make it even more activating. But beyond that, the program, the frequency, the rep range recommendations, the rest times, the programming, exercise selection, the volume, it's all based on all of the science, the most up-to-date science. And there will be a nutrition section, a supplementation section, a sleeping section. God, there's a lot of sections. There's a lot of sections. A cardio section. Fucking like Bible. Yeah. So you can have it all in there as well. Anyway, moving on. This is probably the last question because my computer is about to kick it out. Do I know anything about anterior pelvic tilt and how to fix it and how it happens? I'm not a doctor. I would say see a physical therapist about that. It could be a postural thing you could fix yourself with some exercises. Like for instance, people who have like the neck pushes forward because they sit in front of a computer all day, upper cross syndrome basically, which I've had that problem in the past. Or it could be something that requires surgery. I'm not a doctor. I would recommend you see a physical therapist. Anyway, conventional, this will be the last question because that one was kind of a quick one. Conventional or sumo deadlift for a 6-foot male. Whichever works better for you. I've done both. I know that taller people tend to find that the sumo version is better. The sumo version will activate more hamstring and glute than the conventional version. That much I'm aware of. Possibly a little more glute even, especially. But anyway, thank you guys for tuning in. I will see you all next week. If you look down in the description, as always, you will find, for instance, a protein shake recipe, free PDF. If you download that, you'll get on my mailing list, and you'll get all the updates to that as well about when we're going to kick off Q&As, new episodes that are coming, that have come out, things like that, to keep you updated, generally speaking, on what's going on. I'll also alert about the book when it comes out through the mailing list. And also down there, too, there's my Patreon. There's a Vegan Muscle Academy link if you're interested in training with me, and all that other good stuff. And I will see you all next week. Thanks for tuning in. Take care.